So here's the latest version of the printer app. Most of the changes have to do with color correction. Now you can double click an image and it will open up in an editor, and you basically do all the normal color corrections that you would find: exposure, brightness, contrast, shadows, which you can make the shadows sort of like midtones, lighter or darker, highlights, that's supposed to be the whites. Blacks is just a way to add contrast into the blacks. That's generally what I would use it for, not to make the blacks lighter. Saturation, I got a normalize option. This is my first attempt at making an auto correction thing. Doesn't really work. Normalize is just a built-in function in the Sharp library that I'm using. I wanted to see what it does. It does something on some images. I'm not sure I've seen any that I liked what it did. So you can go through, tab takes you to the next image, then you can do whatever you feel like you want. There's two different amounts, so you see that went to 1.05 and then it went to 1.15 when I clicked on the double plus sign, so it's just a faster way to get to someplace if you know the image needs a lot of correction. Brightness is very different than exposure. Exposure has an element of contrast to it. I think exposure is sort of an exponential change when you click the button, whereas brightness is literally making all the pixels 10 points maybe lighter or darker. I also find this to be pretty good for opening up the shadows, so I don't really use this shadows down here very much because I use brightness. Highlights, haven't seen this do a whole lot. Should make the whites darker. Oh, there it goes. Right, that one seems to take a little while. If I do the before and after, you can see the skies. I actually can't really see much different. It does work. You just need the right images to be able to see what it's doing. Saturation can go down to 0 and then it's all the way desaturated. Seems like it's having a little trouble keeping up with me. Usually it's pretty snappy when I make the corrections. And you can press tab to go to the next one. If the next image shares the same subject and whatnot, you can click apply previous and it will take whatever you had on the prior one. So if I go back, shift and tab takes you back to the previous one, 0.86, 1.2. It has those by clicking on the apply previous. I can roll over. It looks like it's a button, but it's just a roll over, show original. It'll toggle back and forth between what the corrections were. Reset all to reset all the corrections back to normal. And then tab to get to the next one. And I probably should have picked some better images where I could actually do some corrections. The corrections actually apply pretty quickly. Considering the way I'm doing it, I'm re-rendering this image every single time you click any one of these buttons. It's generating a whole new image. I'm not keeping the image data in memory and manipulating that. It's creating a whole new image each time you click one of these buttons. Considering that, I think it works pretty darn good, although this is I'm on a pretty fast computer, so that's part of the deal to get it to work as well as it does. And mostly what I do, a lot of the pictures I'm working on, I'm just doing a little bit of exposure and then some contrast, make them look a little snappier. Obviously on this image that's not looking so great, maybe you could use a little contrast, warm it up a little maybe, make the sunset a little better, maybe even bump the saturation a little bit. It's pretty neat what you can do. Yeah, I think that looks better. And eventually, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on there. The white outline is supposed to be the crop box for the size that they selected when they ordered it. And I believe these images I just duplicated and put them in a folder. And I think they're the wrong proportion for what the folder name says. That's my guess. A lot of the orders that I'm working on are just something I've made up. When you're tabbing through the images and you get to the last image, it'll pop up this message saying you've reached the last file. If you tab one more, you'll load the first one. So this is the first image. Now if I close it, you actually get to see a thumbnail. The thumbnail will actually have the corrections of whatever we did. Like I think that one, we desaturated it. So if I go ahead and do the opposite and make it overly saturated, now you see the thumbnail's been updated here. This little icon here is to show you that it has some corrections. Kind of works the same way as it does in Bridge when you have something open in Camera Raw. Even if there are no corrections, so we'll go to this one, click Reset All. It's really just saying that you've ran it through and looked at it full size. It doesn't know that there's no corrections. I don't think it's worth the effort to get that into all these thumbnails. You can have hundreds of them in here. It just seems like a lot of data. What it's really doing is if I go look at this and explore, there's a cache folder, and I'm using 1,000 pixels as the longest edge is what opens up. So these could be really large images. When you double click it and open it up in the editor, it's very quickly resizing it to 1,000 pixels max so that I can color correct this image without having to update millions of pixels. For the most part, the most pixels you would have is 1,000 by 1,000. What's that, 1,000,000 pixels? But most of them would really be 1,000 here and 700 that way, or 800, maybe 650 or something, depending on what proportion they are, that's going through this color correction. And then when you send something to print, it re-renders it out, applies that same formula, whatever the corrections were, to the full image. That way it doesn't slow down when you're color correcting 1,000,000 of them. And then inside of this folder, there should be two. There should be an adjusted image and then the regular one. So I always keep the original resized 1,000 pixels across on the longest dimension. I keep that as the original so you can do the rollover to see the original. And then I make a new one that has the adjustment. So even if there are no adjustments, I don't know what the last one we looked at was, one of these, I think. There's still an adjusted image version because you opened it up in the editor. I'm assuming this picture must be in there twice. No? Yes? Right. I think, again, I'm copying the images to make more images in the folder there, which is why also the cropping was wrong, I believe. That's about it that's in it right now. I'm pretty happy with the color correction. It actually works really well. We are using this in production for some orders, not on others. I am showing the crop box based on the size that was selected. And again, that's read from the folder name. Eventually, I hope to be able to have at least a way to nudge the image over one way or another, because some orders do come in uncropped. Our ordering system allows you to just choose a size and then upload a whole bunch of images, assuming that you're hopefully cropped them properly. If not, they would be center cropped. But you can see, so this is an 8 by 10, but the image is not proportional to 8 by 10. I'd like to be able to nudge the crop box one way or another. I might make it so you can zoom in and out, but that seems like a lot of effort. The images should be what they need to be already by the time they get to this, but there's always going to be ones where you want to do something like that. I think the other thing that I have that's new is you can right click on an image, you can toggle the reprint status, or you can open it in Photoshop. The reprint status again is, I can't print any of these using these batch buttons up there because they're all complete. This isn't a great example. Let's do something here. Well, all right, I don't need to select those. Let's just say these are 8 by 10s. We'll print everything that's an 8 by 10, send it to the 39A. They're going to go to the bottom once they're printed, but what if the machine jammed and you want to print them again? Oh, that's interesting, right? We did a maximum batch of 270. There's really 320. I didn't really notice the quantities in on here, right? This one needed 100, 100, 35, 25. And then there must be another one, right? That one still needs to be printed. Those need to be printed. Anyways, that's a separate thing. When you see, say, the machine jammed when you printed these and you didn't actually get any prints, you need to reprint them. For them to go back up here and be available and not be counted as printed, you can right-click, toggle the reprint status, and now you're back. Ordered 328, printed 10. Those 10 are something different. Right, that's this one here, printed. Says I did that a few minutes ago. I don't really remember that. Interesting. Right, I think we did that. Interesting. We better have done that a minute ago. Where's the other ones? A minute ago. Right, maybe I didn't select that. Maybe it did 10. Printed 10 still needs 10, right? It added 10 into this. So same thing. I can... Now they're all back to where they were, I believe. Can also open it in Photoshop. I think this will work, right? It's going to open on my other screen, it looks like. Takes a second because I didn't have Photoshop running, so it's opening Photoshop. And there it is. So it just opened the image in Photoshop. If it's already running, it's fairly quick. Could be quicker. Here, let's open another one. So if you knew there was something wrong with this image and you just wanted to open it up in Photoshop and fix something, do some retouching or something, you could do that, then resave it. I think what would happen is back in the printer app, it's not going to update until you double click and open it again, because that's when it's re-rendering this thumbnail. And that's also the thumbnail that's being shown here. This is the same 1000 pixel across image. I think that's about it. I've done some other stuff. I've sort of cleaned up this toggle. Looks a little better. So if you have multiple types of orders that you want to handle separately, you can do that. It makes it a little bit easier to manage which orders you're working on. I've done some cleanup on the settings page. This sort of has some color coding going on, and it's now showing more information about how you set it up. So these are all set up for Noritsu. Tells you the paper type and the width and the feed length. And then if it's darkroom, it tells you the different things you set up as the darkroom. So the command file type of printer, the media, and then this one has a template on it to go do something. That's just a test. But that is actually pretty cool. If you have a template in darkroom that does something, you can apply that to the product, and it works. It's actually super cool. So I think that's about it for now. It's getting really close to being very production ready. I want to add in a way to, sort of like on a calculator, when you can remember a setting. So the apply previous works great when it's the exact previous image that you want to copy from, but what if they're like every other image is something weird or something like that? I want to have a couple of memory things where you could make some sort of weird color correction, and then that would be on this image, but then you click like memory 1 or something, and then there'd be an apply memory 1 or something button, and then as you go to the next image, maybe 3 images down the road, you want to do the same thing as you did on here. I don't know. Seems like it could be handy. So that's about it.